shin yunde gunje gemba simje gunje nyen jigo tamje kenlai gunjai So today we are still discussing about how to practice the right view, and we were discussing about the ground that is object of right view, and understanding the ground, which is unity of two truth, and that kind of certainty is called the right view. So in order to have that kind of certainty, it is important to know the two truths. So yesterday I talked about the conventional truth, and again, to understand the mechanism of conventional truth, it is important to understand the dependent origination, the mechanism of dependent originations, or the law of dependent originations, because so probably I will discuss today about this dependent origination. But before that, I think when we study, or when we those who are engaged in Buddha Dharma and practicing, as we have seen that whole samsara and nirvana is based on the true truth and the Four Noble Truth. And we often I think some sort of overlooked or underestimate the value of understanding or practicing like Four Noble Truth, which is incorrect. It's a very important foundation. In fact, whatever practice we do, we have to understand that it goes into the framework of Four Noble Truths, or it always it's related to one of the Four Noble Truths. And for example, for the beginners especially, when we engage in Dharma, because of many reasons, laziness, wrong information, the half knowledge, there might be there might be many obstacles on the way. And actually the Four Noble Truth is not as easy as it sounds in a way. I mean, it's not that simple. There's a much deeper that we can practice, and it's supposed to be practiced. such questions like for example, we might have this doubt like, is enlightenment even possible? And it's liberation possible? Or how to authenticate that if I practice Dharma, it will eliminate the cause of suffering? And also, do I really want the truth of cessation? Is it really that important, valuable? Or maybe there is something else is more important. So we might have many doubts and questions when we practice Dharma. But for example, if you study Four Noble Truth, not just that, but then if you study more, there is 16 aspects of Four Noble Truth. So each of Four Noble Truth has 16 aspects, and if we understand those 16 aspects of Four Noble Truth, all these are very crucial and important answers that actually we can find within that. And sometimes all these answers are already in there, but somehow we kind of try to find those answers from somewhere outside. So what I'm trying to say is that if we try to really understand, not just understand, but practice Four Noble Truths and 16 aspects and something like that, and it will give us very clear view. Not only that, but it will eliminate lots of our doubts, and then you can be quite confident about the Buddhahood, about yourself, about your path. It is almost like if you're sick and you do some research and you find out that you have the best doctor, you have the best medicine, and you're in the best hospital, and that is a very, very that you can be very confident about that you will be cured. Similarly, if you understand those 16 aspects, it is said that there's a 16 aspects and that there's a 16 wrong views that we have, doubts, and all these doubts will be eliminated through the understanding and the practicing these aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So what I was trying to say is that we are not clear, we don't have a clear view, we are not confident about our own path, Dharma or practice. The one reason is that we are still not clear about Four Noble Truths. Maybe we haven't studied, or maybe we have studied but we haven't really practiced or implement that. So if you do that, it will give you quite a clear directions about our vision and our Dharma practice. And as Buddha said in Sutra, that practicing Dharma is like taking medicine. And as I said yesterday, this metaphor has many meanings, I think. So one is that usually people don't like to take medicine, but they have to do it. And similarly, we don't, I think, like to hear about suffering, dying. These are not something comfortable or soothing to our ears, but it is a reality. So, and also there's a one question that comes up that in this the word in Buddhism, acceptance and the rebellion, right? So maybe there is many dilemmas. Should I rebel or should I accept? The first thing is that I think in the West, there's a little bit like negative impressions on the acceptance, right? If you accept, then you are weak or not strong enough or something like that. But when we say like accepting impermanent, these kind of things, it doesn't necessarily mean you're weak. You are just being more wise. So the line between should I accept or should I rebel is quite relative. So for example, there are certain realities that the problem will be solved if you accept it. If you try to rebel to those realities, it will just create more and more problems. So it will be more wiser to accept. For example, let's say I don't want to die. I want to fight with my death, right? And that will be just stupid. So, because it is inevitable, and just rebelling towards death is not really wise. Now, if you get sick, and then you have certain kind of disease, then, in general, instead of just accepting and doing nothing, you can do something through the acceptance. So, for example, here, when you say you have to rebel, rebellions in the sense that not thinking like, why I'm sick, it's so bad. No, this is not. So, you have to rebel wisely. See if it is curable or not, and then if it is curable, and see what you can do, and trying to cure that will be wiser. So, where to rebel and where to accept, it's you have to do it wisely. So it's not just a one way, it depends. And also, when you take medicine, it is important to follow the process, right? You become very excited, and then if you take all the medicines in one day, probably it doesn't work that way. And also it happens in our Dharma. You become very excited and you want to do everything at one time, and then you are just Dharma overdose will happen. It's too much. And if the doctor says take this after meal, you should take it after meal. If the doctor says you should take it before the meal, you should follow it. So following the process, and that's why we call the gradual path. Everything has a process. Now the one important thing is that it's very important to take the full dose, right? Sometimes you take certain medicine like antibiotic, and then it seems like the symptom is gone, and then if you stop taking it, eventually you might become this resistant, right? Drug resistant. And similarly, when we are practicing, if you don't practice, maybe it might take some time, but it's very important to keep the continuity. Otherwise, if you stop in some, and then you might become a Dharma resistant. Because you try this, stop in the middle, you try that, stop in the middle, and nothing works, because then it's like someone is trying to take 10 different kinds of antibiotic in the hot dose. So that might be difficult once it happens. Then no Dharma can take effect in you. So please study more about these 16 aspects and of the Four Noble Truths, and not only study but try to use those in our daily life. So now today so the dependent origination again is the just another so yesterday we talked about conventional truth, and ultimate truth we can talk about emptiness, but I think in the text it also says that for the beginners, if you don't understand emptiness, try to understand what is dependent origination. And if you understand dependent origination, you're already quite close to the emptiness. So it is very practical to focus on trying to understand what is dependent origination, what is dependent. And it is considered as very important from the many different reasons, as the dependent origination is the very natural law or the mechanism for the both conventional truth and the ultimate truth. So because of that, Buddha says in the sutra, the one who sees the dependent origination sees the reality or sees the Dharma. And also, for instance, in the Shastras, the commentaries, Nagarjuna says that in Mula Madhyamika Karika, I bow down to you, the Buddha, which is supreme and unequal, who showed us and who taught that the path of dependent origination, that is ultimately beyond all kind of extremes and conceptual thoughts. And also in many praise to the Buddha, we will see that how Buddha very wisely explained the Dharma through the two truth, yeah, conventional truth, and in this context, through the dependent and the emptiness. And many prayers, if you read, we will see things like Buddha, who see that everything as non-existent or the emptiness, but you still taught 84,000 dharmas in order to understand this one emptiness. So now, this ultimate truth, of course, is related. We can almost say this ultimate truth would be the, in a way, because yesterday we were talking about the conventional truth as the confusion, and this ultimate truth is almost like a remedy in order to get rid of this confusion. So you can also look at from that point of view, from the path's point of view. Now, okay, so why we need to understand the emptiness, so to speak, this ultimate truth. Let's go back to yesterday's analogy of the rope and seeing rope as a snake and getting scared. So of course, scariness, getting scared is suffering, and we don't want it, right? So we want it to free from the illusion of snake, so that we can get rid of our suffering. Now, there are many reasons, there are several conditions, but if you look at this, the main reason was ignorance, right? Not seeing as it is. So this is the main point. And because of that also, if you look at the whole 12 dependent origination, the ignorance is the core. So now, what is the antidote to this ignorance? Since ignorance is not seeing as it is, and then the, let's say, wisdom that realizes as it is would be the antidote to this ignorance. So it's almost like seeing rope as a rope would be the, antidote in order to get rid of that illusion. So now, from the Buddhist point of view, when we say ignorance, namely we can call it clinging as in something independent, right? Clinging something as in truly established, and as well as clinging to like self-clinging. So if you look at all these ignorances, whether it is clinging something as in truly established, or clinging, for example, this me, I, these are all coming from not understanding that these are dependent. So this truly established or reality, is if you look at the connotation, it has a strong sense of being independent. Without depending something, it is there, right? So all these are occurring, not understanding how it is dependent. And because of that, in order to get rid out of these ignorances, such as clinging to truly established or clinging to self, existing. It is very, very important to understand the dependent. So in a way, we can also call it this: understanding the dependent will be the wisdom that eliminates the ignorance which causes us the illusion. So, generally speaking, dependent origination is not something extraordinary, because it's everywhere, and it's a very common sense. Yeah? But again, we know very limited layers of dependent origination. We know some, even normal people like us. We all know that this is dependent, right? In a way, it comes from seeds and houses, everything. But again, because of many reasons, even we know very shallow level of dependent, there's a much more to be known, and also still there's a lot of imputations, mental imputations we do. Because of that, we get more and more confused, and this confusion will trigger our excitement and disappointment. Now, the one important thing is that when you look at something, and then when we call this word middle way, is like the right balance. When you look at something, and when you are in the very right balance, you are seeing reality. The moment you exaggerate or you denigrate, you are imputing. So, when I look at this object, I will not see its reality, but I will exaggerate it. Yeah? For example, if I look at this flower, and I just don't perceive this thing as a combination of atoms, I don't say it. I just say, oh, flower, right? So there's a very natural reaction, flower. And not only that, but oh, it's beautiful. Maybe it's not beautiful, So immediately so many other thought chains comes within that, and then it will trigger my excitement or disappointment. So actually, when we say this seeing reality, it's that when you look at something and you don't how to say, you don't exaggerate it or you don't denigrate it out of your own mental habits. Because right now I'm seeing